I'm here. Okay.
Well, that must be. I think that's for us then, isn't it? So I'll put that there. I presume that's for us.
Yeah, I assume someone's going to tell us. Oh, my mic is live.
So I guess we won't be able to see anyone anyway, so
I can't see a thing.
we can just look at each other.
It's a good setup, isn't it? It's a good setup.
Yeah.
It's really making me question the fidelity of those videos.
Pardon?
It's really making me question the fidelity of those videos. Because
find out
obviously,
soon.
yeah, hopefully they're not like 5 pixels each, because that's huge.
No, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so am I starting? Hello, hello. Woo, those lights are bright. Can't see anything. Hello, everyone. I believe we're starting now, are we? Yes? Woohoo! Yes, hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. If you could just settle down, take your seats, and I will stare into this super bright light and welcome you all to this session. And just to, in case some of you might have known the old title for it, the current title for it is Real Problems, Virtual Solutions. Is immersive tech just a gimmick or of genuine value? Don't know about you, but I'm super excited to find out the answer to that question. So let me introduce myself. I'm Steph Wright. I'm the head of the Scottish AI Alliance. What is the Scottish AI Alliance, I hear you ask? We are the body tasked with the delivery of Scotland's national AI strategy. And that strategy was released in 2021, and our vision was for Scotland to become a leader in the development and use of trustworthy, ethical, and inclusive AI. Well, that's enough about me, because I'm quite delighted we're not actually going to be really talking about AI today. So we are here talking about immersive tech. And with me, I have two amazing panelists. I have here Lena Srebrova, who's the XR strategist for Digitalnauts, which is a Glasgow-based company. Yeah. And then I also have Professor Paul Chapman, who's Director of Emerging Technology at the Glasgow School of Art. So I'd like to welcome them. We've got a really exciting session here today. I have to confess, I actually don't know very much about immersive tech. VR goggles make me sick. But I'm really looking forward to find out what the potential is of an emerging technology such as this. Although it's been emerging for a while, I imagine it's perhaps not quite emerging anymore. But anyway, we're going to kick off with Paul, who's going to give you some thoughts on the whole thing, and then we'll move on to Lina, and then we'll get deep into conversation. But before we start, I need to flag that Slido has been turned on for this session. There we go. Scan that QR code to ask a question. Throughout the session, keep them coming in, and then I'll get it to this trusty iPad, and I'll ask our panelists those questions. But anyway, without further ado, over to Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I presume there's people out there. I can't actually see anything apart from just a big bright light. I'm sure there's people out there. So have we got slides to see? Okay, fantastic. So yeah, I'm Paul Chapman. I've been working in immersive environments and computer graphics for over 25 years now. I'm passionate about using technology to try and solve real-world problems. I'm not really interested in sort of blue sky research. I like to find real problems and try and apply technology to solve them. And my background's really in computer science, and then I sort of specialized in computer graphics and virtual environments. And I've worked across quite a number of sectors, from sort of dangerous sports visualization, shipbuilding, heritage, pharmaceuticals, and we can discuss, and I can give a demonstration of some of those today, and we can talk about some of the examples. So what we've got here is a picture of Strathclyde University's strategic document for the next 5 years, and we do a lot of work with Strathclyde, and I think what's really amazing is how they've really sort of bitten down into augmented reality and immersive environments. So this is a graphic from their strategic document. On the right of the image, you can see that they've got laboratory personnel working with augmented reality. Now, this isn't just a photoshopped image. We're actually doing this work now. So this is my tenement flat in Glasgow, and this is working with the HoloLens. So with Strathclyde, we're working specifically with HoloLens, but of course at the other end of the spectrum, you've got sort of more mobile devices. And what we're seeing here is accurate visualizations of complex laboratory equipment. And hopefully there's a little video here that hopefully will play. There we go. So this is a 1-to-1 scale. And what we're able to do now, this is quite an old video now, but certainly with the work we're doing at the moment, you can actually interact with the equipment. Now, all this sort of laboratory equipment to do with medicines manufacture, it's just churning out data. Data's flying all over the place. There's fire hoses of information and data, and you can tap into these and visualize them. So, for example, I could be walking around an experiment that's taking place in another country, or I could be using this software and this hardware in order to understand how to operate complex equipment. And I can learn how to use the equipment, which is very complex. There can be very complex procedures. For example, disassembly and reassembly of equipment. And it's just such an intuitive environment. And this is all using the HoloLens. So the HoloLens 2, which is, even that technology is quite old now. So I don't know if anyone's had to go on the MetaQuest 3, which has just come out, but incredible hardware. And if you think back to sort of the early 90s when virtual reality was kicking off with regards to sort of being able to get into the hardware, it's so expensive to get into. There's no excuses now for not being able to experiment, because you can buy MetaQuest 3 for about £600 or £700 with 512 memory. So there's no real excuses. So if I just jump forward, this is another project that we do. I'm just going to give a couple of examples, and I'll pass over to Lina. This is a patient leaflet, and even on this wonderful display, I wonder if you can actually read what it says. This is what's actually sent out by the NHS at the moment. It says MRI scan, day case, GA, which means general anaesthetic. So this is what's actually being sent out at the moment. It's completely illegible because it's a photocopy of a photocopy. So what we've been doing is we've been working closely, my colleague, Professor Stephen Lowe, who's a plastic surgeon in Glasgow, we've been working closely at developing new types of communication methods using, we've looked at the HoloLens, but down at the other end of the spectrum, sort of mobile devices, where, of course, they're much more ubiquitous, and developing new types of patient leaflet where you can just point your mobile phone at it and it comes to life. So we've done a big project with the cleft lip, and this is to explain to parents about the procedure that's going to take place for their child. And about 40% of the population can struggle to understand these complex and almost illegible patient leaflets that we saw. So when you represent things graphically, it's so much more intuitive to understand what's going on. And when you represent it in augmented reality like this, it's incredibly powerful. And the lab experiments that we've done so far really demonstrate and prove that this type of technology is fantastic when trying to explain complex procedures to parents. And we've just got more funding from Beatson to do more NHS patient leaflets, but working on breast cancer. So there's just a couple of examples, and there's others I can talk about later depending on time and where we get to. But a couple of real-world examples of augmented reality in use today.
Thank you, Paul. I think actually before we move on to Lina, maybe we should actually start at the beginning and really talk about the technologies and maybe perhaps define for the audience what we mean when we talk about immersive technologies. So you've shown examples of augmented reality, and when I introduced, I kind of referred to virtual reality. So I don't know if either of you want to kind of give a brief overview of that before we move on.
Yeah.
I think that would be very useful.
Yeah. So Lina?
Yeah. So for me, any kind of immersive technologies or the so-called extended reality is really a way to blend the real world and digital. So if you think about it like a scale, you can basically have the very immersive part of it, which is virtual reality, where you're completely focused in a virtual space that's artificially created by a computer engine, and anything is possible. Anything from the real world you can recreate, but also anything that doesn't exist in the real world. And then if you kind of slide a little bit towards the more real side of it, that's probably where you have mixed reality. So mixed reality is where you use the HoloLens, and you can see the real world, you can see digital assets overlaid on top, but you can also interact with those assets, as you could see in the video. And I guess augmented reality is the one that we are probably most familiar with, because all of the Instagram filters and Snapchat filters, they're actually using this type of technology. So you can use your phone or a tablet to scan the real world and basically have different types of virtual assets pop up to integrate with that. But these are all the same technologies, and depending on different use cases and needs, they can actually be used to the best of their possibility. I don't know if maybe Paul has something to add from his perspective, but I've always kind of looked at it like, it is the same, it's just
that's
different.
a good analogy, and I think what we're seeing now with hardware is there's a real mixture and blend between the two. So if you look at something like the Quest 3, which is a recent, I think it's about 12 headsets that have come out in the last 12 months, which is incredible. Quest 3 is a really nice piece of kit, and you can shift between virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you look at the Apple's Vision Pro, which is the new headset, which will be coming, we'll be able to get our hands on it properly, hopefully very soon. And you all know with Apple, when they do something, they really, really go for it. They've got that blend as well. So they've got cameras looking out, which can then project back inside for you, so it looks like you're looking out. And they do some interesting things as well, because they project your eyes. So if you're looking out and looking at people, people can see that your eyes are there, so therefore they know that you're looking at them. And then if you turn a dial on the headset, it goes into virtual reality, which is towards that first end of the spectrum that Lina was talking about.
Great. No, thank you very much. I just realized we launched straight into it and didn't actually define the technologies we were talking about. So I think I already have several questions cooking up in my head, but let's go to Lina, where she can talk a bit about her experience and give some use cases from her perspective as well.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. I was looking at Paul's examples previously, and I was like, we don't deal with stuff like that. I have never actually dabbled too much with the healthcare side of things, but I think it's a fascinating, you can just see the real need for something like that when it comes to training. So I'm Lena Srebrova. I'm the XR strategist at Digitalnauts, and for the past 4 years, I've been working with companies from all over different industrial sectors. So from maritime all the way to pharmaceutical, to energy and construction. And I've worked with companies from some of the world's leading biggest organizations all the way down to small startups. And I think that's why I find this type of conversation so fascinating, because there's so much to know about immersive technologies and how accessible and affordable they are right now, and how much they can actually add value to our businesses. But there's a big piece of knowledge that's currently missing, and there's a lot of maybe like myths that need to be debunked when it comes to our technologies, because there's always big marketing campaigns about the metaverse, but there's so much smoke and mirrors that I think, it's so important to have conversations like this where we can talk about practitioners and people who are doing it day to day. So I have a couple of examples as well. So this is a virtual reality training project. It's something that I built together with my colleagues for Stena, the big maritime company. And it is a mooring simulator. So it's something that currently has absolutely no way to be trained in the real world. And it sounds almost impossible because the amount of people that are actually in this industry and they need to get on ships, it's hard to believe it. I'm not sure if the video is working very well, hopefully. But basically, because of the amount of people that enter the industry, there's not enough ships that they can actually go on and try how to do mooring. And that has to do everything from deck safety all the way to how do you actually throw the ropes the right way. And it's actually a very, very dangerous process. And very little people know about that because, it is a hard thing to say. Currently, there's no training physically about that. So I think we found it very kind of honoring to be able to be the first people to actually develop that. We work very, very closely with engineers, people who are already currently doing the job, some of the end users, to represent exactly where the biggest hazards are when it comes to these technologies. So you can physically experience yourself. Sorry, I think I was going to stop there. So you could physically experience being on the ship, seeing all the different hazards around you, navigating your way through. You could do it remotely. So a lot of these people, they didn't have access to a ship, right? And a lot of these ships are already somewhere in the Mediterranean. So currently, if you want to train and you need to do some compulsory modules, they actually need to get a helicopter from land to ship everyone in terms of equipment, people, to the ship, do the training, and then get back to land, which, even from purely an environmental point of view is absolutely unacceptable in this time and day, I think, considering the technologies that are available. So yeah, that was just an example of, I think, where immersive technology started. Pilot training was probably, the most kind of popular, and then from there, it was almost a no-brainer to go down to, yes, this is something that definitely can be used for training. But I wanted to show a couple more examples of using augmented reality in a business setting. So this is a piece that is currently exhibited in the National History Museum in London. And it blends the real world, which is this little physical model of a building that you can see, and basically triggers animations on top of it. And the whole idea is to communicate those ideas and concepts when it comes to construction that are very hard to do if you don't visualize it. Because people are visual creatures, and they communicate usually in a very visual way. We all live in a 3D world, but currently we all communicate in 2D. It's either on paper or on a 2D screen, and I think that there's a big breach of communication there that basically immersive technologies are helping to communicate any type of problem using existing data or assets. So in this case, the idea was to communicate how easy it is to use this type of buildings. A lot of them arrive as a flat pack IKEA furniture, but people are worried, how am I going to build a whole building by myself? I'm not a specialist. But basically, they're affordable and they're available. So here you can see an example where the building basically comes to you. So you can pop it literally in your living room, or you can maybe even go to, the Highlands or your back garden to see exactly how these are going to look in context. And this is just using a tablet. Many people aren't exactly quite comfortable with the glasses yet. It does take a little bit of maybe getting used to them. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's multiple different ways to deliver the technology. So it can be very hands-off or very hands-on. This is also a little example that we had using the HoloLens as well. So it's a mixed reality. You can actually move the assets. You can visualize in your own pace. You can learn. It's very standardized. So the next time someone needs to do it, it's going to be exactly at the same high level. You don't need any other trainers as well. All you need to do is basically, pop on the headset. You don't need a computer or anything like that. It's very intuitive. And I'm trying to keep this short, but I'll have one more example to show you, which is, I guess, where the state of possible is when it comes to immersive technologies. And it's about communicating in a virtual environment and putting people from all over the world into this space where they can not just communicate between themselves, but they can also bring any type of assets. So on the side, you can see different schematics. You can see people, talking to each other. We're representing a little room. You can bring your 360 assets that you might already have existing and bring people in that environment, bring that context to the people and allow them any type of interaction. You can plan, you can visualize things that don't exist just yet, or you can just make your best kind of decisions. So this is a project that we did again with a maritime company and that I was talking about previously, but actually we recognize that it could be used across any industry. So here we have a LiDAR scan that was literally taken by using an iPhone. So any iPhone Pro can currently provide you with those spatial images. So think about what you already have available literally at your fingertips that you can use to create those experiences and leverage them in the best way possible so you can use them in your workplace. I guess that was I think that my message altogether for this session is the technology is already here, it's available, and people just need to know that extra bit to know safely this is something that I want to do. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. That all looked amazing. And what you're saying about the technology is here, I think I touched on it at the start, VR technologies have been around for a while. I remember first encountering it 10, 15 years ago. And at that time, the creative sector were the ones who really embraced it to make creative content that people can experience. And then I remember reading an article a long time ago actually saying that the VR industry could be a total game changer in terms of diversity. I wanted to get your thoughts on that because at that time it said that in lots of tech industries, the dominant gender in it were men. It was dominated by men. But VR gave an opportunity for women to kind of take the lead on a lot of it. And I'm just curious how that has turned out, over the last 10, 15 years.
I think it's quite interesting, maybe from the perspective where in virtual reality, you can put yourself in the point of view of anyone. Mm-hmm. So you can actually see through the eyes of people, because if you were to take a 360 type of, capture basically a whole reality or the environment, you can have actors playing out, exactly how maybe you feel from someone else's point of view. So I think that's very much valid for not just from a gender perspective, but any type of diversity and equality, because you can actually see, okay, so if I'm someone of limited ability, and basically trying to make my way to the office, which is located on whatever floor of the building, you can actually experience the whole route from home to that place, just allowing you that empathy that nothing else can deliver. Because if you're watching a video, sometimes it just doesn't give you that same, immersive, again, type of experience.
Touching on the empathy thing, I remember that there was a lot of talk about how lots of third sector and voluntary organizations were using it to train staff to understand their users, because it, puts them in a much more hands-on, immersive experience to understand, say, if they're working with the homeless or working with vulnerable people, that they can, it helps build empathy and therefore deliver their services better. So is that still a use of these technologies?
Well, I think one of the powers of virtual environments and immersive environments is it can truly immerse you in an environment that otherwise you wouldn't be able to experience unless you're experiencing the real thing. Mm-hmm. So a project I did many years ago was working with the British Hang Gliding and Paragliding Association, and we built the first paragliding simulator. And if you think of skydiving, it's actually quite a terrifying activity. And if they, traditional forms of teaching people how to skydive, they would have you sitting down here in a classroom, and they'd put a photograph above your head. So you open your parachute and they go, what would you do now? And they just put a photograph above your head. And you'd look at it and you go, well, I won't do anything because I think this is going to happen. And they go, now what would you do? And they show a different photograph. But that's not immersive, because you're not falling at 120 miles an hour with the wind and you're spinning, you know. So with virtual environments, you can do that. Decision making breaks down when you're stressed. You're not stressed if you're looking at a photograph. So if you can train someone in virtual environments, you can truly immerse them in environments where they can train knowing roughly what they're going to experience. So you can experience that spinning, you can experience that sound and the visuals. Another case study example is there's a nuclear power station that's being decommissioned, and they turned all the power off to the nuclear power station. And we built VR simulators for the engineers so that they could understand what it's going to be like to walk around the power station in pitch black with just a torch on their head. And it looks like a computer game. It looks like there's an alien going to jump out or something, but it does immerse them in the environment, and then again they know what it's going to be like. And just going back, Steph, to an earlier question about sort of gender. When I studied computer science and virtual reality in the early 90s, it was pretty much on my course. I think there was only 2 women on the course. Okay. We teach virtual reality on our courses, and it's a good split. It's a very diverse class with so I think there's huge changes happen there.
That's really encouraging to hear. You touched on gaming there, and we spoke about it before the session. That gaming is obviously the game sector is obviously a huge user of these immersive technologies, and probably the early adopters of it perhaps as well. I mean, I guess a lot of people's first experience of like augmented reality was possibly Pokemon Go, right? That gripped the imaginations of the nation and worldwide actually. But do you see a shift now that other sectors are now realizing the potential of these technologies? And are there particular sectors that you feel are embracing it more than others?
Yeah, I mean, gaming. I mean, I'm obviously
yes.
I'm an old school.
Yeah, Atari for you.
Yeah, old school. Yeah, no, I mean we've got to thank the games industry, because it's the games industry that's brought the price of GPUs down. And that's the whole reason. You know, when I was a student, everything was silicon graphics computers, which cost thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. VR equipment cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. And because of the huge demand for high-speed GPUs at low cost, because there's such a massive demand for people playing games, that's brought the price right down. So you see companies like NVIDIA, and NVIDIA's lucky because they've now jumped on the AI bandwagon. You know, what that enabled us to do is to suddenly be able to look at complex volumetric medical data, for example, using a games graphics card. So we've got huge thanks to the games industry and the huge demand, which has really facilitated other disciplines.
Would you say the games industry has paved the way for other industries to really get in on this technology?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. So actually my first experience of virtual reality was this game that most people probably have tried, hopefully by this point. It's called the Rich's Plank Challenge. And basically you're walking outside of, it's terrifying, honestly. And I'm not even afraid of heights. I love heights, but that was an unrealistic type of scenario. It was just way too high. So you get into an elevator, you press the button and you get somewhere, I don't know, maybe 60th or 70th floor, something like that. My lovely colleagues had put a physical plank on the floor where they actually measured how long and how wide the plank is, which then feeds into the game. And then, you know, they gave me the headset. It was my first working day, so pressure was already high. And I was like, okay, let's just see how this goes. Very excited. The doors of the elevator open, and honestly, Like I had sweaty palms straight away. I could feel it because the controllers were almost sliding out of me. And I was just, my knees were trembling. I honestly didn't feel like myself at all. And they were very encouraging. They were like, oh, do it, you can do it, we're sure. And I was like, I don't think I can. I was literally trembling, and I did like one step, second step, and I just had to take it off. I was like, wow, okay, this is not happening. And a bit later, we were all together, and everyone was, doing it by crawling on the plank. They were doing it backwards. They were doing it in so many different ways, and they were, getting to the end of the plank. You had to grab this cake, and I was like, how can they do it like that? How are they not afraid? And then I realized that because practice makes perfect, right? And you actually can train your brain by doing things again and again and again to get over any type of fears, to learn things so much to an extent where even if you're in that situation where it's a very kind of emergency situation of high adrenaline, you know exactly what to do because it's already in your brain, and you feel it's like a memory. You have a memory of being through that situation and doing it. So at that moment, I was like, the potential for business is immense. It's huge. So yeah, there's so many industries. I think definitely the first ones were the ones where there was a lot of danger and a lot of complex type of scenarios they had to practice through. Obviously, expensive equipment or things that you can't possibly do in the real world, like fire. And I think where VR is specifically very, very good is addressing all the different senses. So you have that 3D audio, you have, the immersive, part of it. You can interact with things. You get a bit of maybe, vibration and some sort of feedback. And there's those new companies that are dealing with smell. So you're in that completely, immersed environment where anything is possible because you're just, in there. And depending on what you're doing, there's so many different ways to look at it.
And the treatment of phobias, which is what you discussed there, that was one of the early applications of VR. When VR was searching for an area to go down, treatment of phobias is very, very powerful, as you described, because you really feel that you're there. Another good example of that is treatment of arachnophobia, and there's a lot of research done where people are scared of spiders. And Lena's talking about elevated heart rate, sweating. All of that can be monitored, and if you are arachnophobic, you can sit in a virtual environment and you sit like that, and you've got a controller, and it starts off. Level 1 is a spider underneath a glass, an upturned glass, and you look at it, and your heart rate goes up. But eventually, of course, your heart rate will come back down again. So then you move to level 2, and the spider's out the glass, and it's sort of wandering around. And if you jump up to sort of level 10, then they're all over you. And you can see them crawling around, and you have spiders of varying sizes as well. So you get the big Australian sort of hand-sized spiders. But eventually, your heart rate will come down. And it's like Lena's saying, that at the end of the day, people are going up and down, the walking, and they know how to use it. Because you're properly immersing people in that environment. So it's a fantastic training tool. If you're learning these dangerous activities, or if you're going into a dangerous environment, it's fantastic to prepare people for what they're going to see. But what's imperative is that you train them correctly, and that you're modeling everything correctly. Because, for example, if you're doing a simulation that's sort of safety critical, whereby your life can depend on it. So let's say, for example, a skydiving simulator. If you train people, if you program it wrong, or if you put the wrong controls in, or the wrong sort of resolutions, people will get used to doing that, and then when they go and do the real thing, they'll do it wrong. Because it's like when you get a car and you've got the indicators and the wipers on the different side, you keep doing the wrong one because you've learnt in a different environment. So if you do immersive and virtual environments in these dangerous activities, you've got to get it right. And Lena gave examples of the offshore stuff. It's imperative that we train people correctly and that you're working with the correct people.
Well, we're going to go to some questions from the audience now. We've got lots of them. One is to do with your favorite Atari game, I think, but we'll leave that to the end. I like this one. With the shift to hybrid and remote working, where can you see virtual augmented reality helping businesses connect their people?
That's a very good question.
Who wants to take it?
I'm happy. Yeah,
I think I can both.
so I think for me, collaborative visualization, collaborative working is imperative with these types of technology. You know, when VR first took off, it was a very solitary affair. You know, if you look back to, like, you know, Nintendo's Game Boy VR system, it was a complete disaster, and nobody knew what that person was experiencing, apart from the fact that it was a very poor VR experience. We can all experience VR, but it goes onto another level when you can suddenly see your colleagues working with you, and you can see Meta have done a huge amount of research and investment at the moment, where rather than just looking at people's with a helmet-mounted, head-mounted display on, you can actually see their face, because you scan the face. The HMDs can detect your emotions, and they can portray those, and you can see people around us, and it makes such a difference, especially for learning as well, and to be able to communicate with people. And it becomes, you know, as the technology improves, which we're seeing this incredible improvement in the tech. As I said, there's 12 headsets out in the last 12 months. You've got Apple join the dance now as well. So huge advancements in the technology. They're becoming lighter, the resolution's increasing, and eventually we're going to be on these sorts of devices. In fact, Meta and Ray-Ban have just joined forces, and you've got devices like those. So I think collaborative visualization, being able to communicate and see people, is a fantastic experience. I've got a really good friend who lives in Australia, and every month we go on to a World War II submarine together in virtual reality, and we have a good catch-up. And we drive this submarine around and sink ships and all sorts. And it's a fantastic time, you know, just to get together and catch up. But also from a serious perspective, you know, it's so powerful to be able to see people, and especially see their emotions, which is where we're going.
Brilliant. On to the next question. How do you think local governments, such as Glasgow City Region Council, could use immersive technologies and better engage with all its great opportunities?
Okay, I'll take this one.
Yeah.
That's a harder one, though.
Yeah.
I think where it needs to start, probably, when it comes to any type of local authorities or the government and immersive technologies, it will need to start with the knowledge piece. There is quite a lot that needs to be known first, so that you basically establish that culture of change, that culture of innovation, and that culture of trial and error, because we need to appreciate that it's still an emerging technology. You know, it is definitely past that kind of trough of disillusionment when it comes to, you know, the different hype model. But I think it's definitely needed in order to ensure that whatever you do next is actually going to be meaningful. We spoke about so many different use cases. There is a big piece, I think, in terms of communicating problems or any type of complex ideas to the public. I was recently attending the labor conference because they were trying to introduce it, you know, to the government and seeing how. So we were talking about, obviously, education and all the forward-facing type of engagements that usually people need to do. And you know, there's a lot of companies or a lot of you know, different types of organizations that have to do a lot when it comes to approval from the public. If you think about big developments when it comes to construction, you know, the wind turbines, how is that going to affect everyone in that area? You can actually put yourself in the point of view of your own house, your own, like, different windows, maybe in the kitchen, in the bedroom, and you can actually visualize exactly how the wind turbine is going to look, but also how it's going to sound, because there's many people that are worried about that. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, I mean, the actual use cases are probably endless. But I think what's important is that understanding, having a good plan in place, and having a strategy of how can you actually leverage that. So once you've developed something at such a high level when it comes to authorities, then how do you make that accessible to more people? How do you make it, you know, delivered at scale? I think there's a lot of conversations to be had, apart from the use cases.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of parallels with technologies like AI right now. That there's there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of news and hype out there. There's a lot of FOMO, but ultimately at the heart of it, there's a lot of misunderstanding and of what it can and can't do and whether it works for your business. And I think it applies to really any emerging technology, because you're just bombarded on a daily basis by oh my God, it's magic, it does this, it does that, but there's never a technology that works for every business, every sector. But just linking to that last question, you know, how easy or hard has it been to get buy-in from non-technical leaders in sectors such as construction, where adoption of tech is low? Do you think actually VR does the visual aspect of it help?
I think we're seeing construction, you know, verticals like construction really getting onto the bandwagon with the tech. I mean, a lot of the data sets that they work with can be imported very easily into the technology, and you know, the whole sort of barriers to entry have really been removed now. You don't even need to have programming knowledge in order to be able to develop training tools in immersive environments, in augmented reality. So, and also there's lots of different types of hardware, but with the software that we have access to now, we can just recompile to any type of new device. So if a new device does come on the market, we can just recompile. So obviously construction, architecture, those are classic examples where there's huge benefits for the technology.
I would like to add a little bit to that, if you don't mind. I think there's kind of different aspects to look at. What are some of the challenges? I think one of the challenges in construction in general is trying to attract new people and young talent, because obviously a lot of the old talent is leaving, having those valuable, you know, skills basically going with them. And I think that's where there's a big gap that the technology can actually address. Not just attracting new people with obviously, you know, introducing new ways of doing work and new ways of training, but also capturing those valuable skills. And, you know, the new generation, they are tech savvy. They're born, you know, basically in that tech age where they know how easy it is for them to actually get used to the technology. So I think that side of the things is pretty much covered. Where the older maybe generations are finding it a bit harder. You said it yourself, you know, you are like, oh, I feel a little bit sick when I sometimes, you know, put the headset on. But there's so many factors in that. So there was a lot of older kind of generation of hardware that really wasn't helping with that. There's also how do you develop the content? How do you develop the software? You know, is it very intuitive? Is it easy to understand? How, you know, is the user experience good enough? I think if all these things are developed to a high standard and it doesn't feel like, you know, you're going on a train backwards type of experience, the new headsets and the new type of development with some of the very talented professionals that are currently working in the space, there's no reason why right now people trying virtual reality will actually feel any type of, you know, dizziness and uncertainty because of how quickly things have developed.
Sign me up. It sounds brilliant. I think
I'll
we're
catch you after the session.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're running out of time now, but questions that's just come in. So I'm going to, you know, exert chair's prerogative here because it's of interest to me as well. Can VR be used in combination with AI to allow people to simply practice skills they are self-conscious about rather than being dangerous, e.g. people skills? I mean, we've obviously touched on the whole empathy, the ability to immerse yourself in a situation and stuff, but maybe it could be the type of thing that gets people to be more confident speaking in front of crowds and things like that. What do you think of the potential in that?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I mean, Meta doing a lot of research into sort of emotions and gestures within the face. AI and AR, you know, they help each other out. You know, you've got a lot of augmented reality and immersive interfaces into AI, and you've also got AI facilitating a lot of the computer graphics generation. So they're not a threat to each other. They work very closely to each other. So the example I gave at the beginning with the pharmaceutical labs, there's a huge amount of AI engine behind that, driving the medicines manufacture. And with the examples in the question about sort of learning how to interface to people, maybe learning how to communicate or talk in public, or all of that is already being done in immersive environments with AI. So
Brilliant.
It's already being done.
Yeah. Okay, last thought from me is that this conversation just reminded me, over a decade ago, I was involved in a piece of art, a performance piece, where you go into a black room, you get a headset put on, a VR headset, and then and the experience is someone then comes and dances with you as you're a dancer. And it absolutely shocked us all how emotionally effective that was. People came out crying from that experience. So I think, there's so much potential with this immersive world that I think we're only at the beginning of tapping. So I'm going to close off with asking you both for advice for the audience. If they were to, what advice would you give them to cut through the noise, to find out more, to find out whether this is good for their organization, their sector, their company, or even out of personal interest? What would you suggest? Lena first, then Paul.
So it might sound a bit general, but I really want to kind of highlight that the best way to kind of think about a technology, it's a communication and a visualization tool. So anytime you think about where I can use it, just think what is it I need to communicate and how can I make it better? I think the best way to go about it is to think about, I can start by exploring things, but as soon as I get into developing, I need to make sure that there's a strategy underlying everything and making sure that you know what is the need that you're addressing. Why immersive? It's not just a gimmick. It can do so much value for your business.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice for any technology. Understand your business problem before applying any technology to it. And then over to you, Paul.
I mean, Steph touched on it earlier. Immersive environments isn't a panacea. It's not a solve-all problem. So my recommendation would be try and experience it yourself, because sometimes when you experience good VR or AR, you get an idea of how those principles could be applied to your problems. The other thing is, look at things like innovation vouchers, which are supplied by government. So you can tap into those and build prototypes. And you get a few £1,000s, and you can just build a prototype just to see if it works. So yeah, I mean, the risk is quite negligible now compared to the risk of investing and experimenting from, say, 10 years ago, because the hardware costs are so low and that the tools are so much more readily available. So, experiment, look and see what's out there, and think about how those principles could be applied to problems that you're experiencing in your business.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for all your questions. Sorry, there were quite a few unanswered, but do come and speak to Paul and Lena afterwards. So that leaves me to say thank you so much to our panelists. Please give them a warm round of applause. Thank you so much.
Just before we go, I just wanted to say there is an XR workshop, so it's a much more practical session that I'll be a part of at 12:50 at the Tower, I think, North Tower. So please, if anyone wants to come and actually see things a bit more in action, it will be a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.